about to start filming the video on this KitchenAid 7-quart Proline
when this little lizard came out to say hello. That's a skink.
Skink, not stink, but speaking of stink, they actually discontinued the Proline 7-quart KitchenAid mixer. So the 7-quart Proline is a wonderful, powerful machine. It's powered by a 1.3 horsepower DC motor. It's a really strong and quiet machine. I'm not really sure why they took it out of their lineup. They did bring in a new 7-quart machine, but it's AC powered motor like the professional 600s are. But have no fear, all of the parts are still going to be available because the Proline 7-quart and the commercial 8-quart machine use the exact same internal components. They're still manufacturing the 8-quart machine, so you'll still be able to get everything you need for the 7-quarts. Speaking of parts, I'm going to be doing a series on the 7 and 8-quart machines. Like I said, they are exactly the same machines, just the 8-quart comes with an 8-quart bowl. That's really the only difference. We're going to go through, show you some of the more common issues with these machines, and so today, we're going to show you how to do a motor swap. Now the only question is, who brought the party favors? Because, well, I'm ready to get this party started. Now there are a few reasons why you would want to change the motors on these machines. The first being is if your gears go out. Now there is no way to get just the individual gears for these machines. They just don't manufacture them. Everything comes as a solid unit. The transmission and the motor and the planetary, it all comes as a whole unit, which I'll show you here in a second. You can take it apart and you can see the individual gears. You can figure out which gear went wrong, but you just can't buy it. Next is the fans. Sometimes the fans go bad, they'll break, and for some reason, it just causes the machine to turn on. It'll run for a few seconds, and then it'll click and power down. And a similar issue is the Hall sensor as well. So there's a little magnet, and I'm going to show all this as we go here, but there's a little magnet that's on the back of the motor, and as it spins, the Hall effect sensor reads that. And if that magnet breaks off of there, which I have seen, it kind of does the same thing. You'll turn it on, it'll start, it'll rev up to speed. It might even go all the way to high speed, and then it'll just power down. Now, a good indication that it is the gears that went bad is if you go ahead and you turn the machine on and you just hear a click, or you hear like a binding noise, it generally doesn't even start to spin the planetary. Everything's bound up in there when the gears break. And so when you turn it on, you'll like hear a little click, maybe even a little hum, but then it'll just power down after that. That's a good indication you got some bad gears. And well, lastly is just going to be any sort of electrical failure in the motor. There's not a really great way to test that. It can mimic other symptoms of the speed control board as well, which we will show in another video how to replace the speed boards on these. But yeah, there's a lot of reasons why you might want to change the motor. We'll just show you how to do it. So the first thing that we're going to want to do here is get ourselves a towel, and we're going to put that right on the base right here because we actually have to knock out a pin right here. And sometimes when you knock that pin out, this planetary can fall. We don't want it to damage the nice paint on the base of your machine, so just put down a towel and let's knock this pin out. All right, so this here is the pin that I am referencing here. Now this pin comes out significantly easier on these machines than it does on the tilt head machines. You don't really have to hit it that hard. We'll just line it up, give it a few taps. And just like that, the pin is out. Now, quick sidebar here. Sometimes these pins can get bent, they can get damaged. If you're looking to replace this pin, you just take a little bit of heed because it is not the same size. So this is one from the tilt heads, and this is the one I just pulled from this 7-quart machine. You can tell this one's quite a bit larger, so when you're going to look for a replacement, make sure that you're getting the correct machine. We do have these available on our website.
Our guest on the show today, Little Remington. Hello. Okay, so now that that pin is out of place, we can go ahead and this planetary will just slide down and out just like so.
Oh look, fraternal twins. Now you're going to notice an obvious color change because I'm actually going to be repairing this silver machine here. I was just using the white one as a prop. Let me tell you why. So I like to show all of these repairs from start to finish. Now you can tell this one does not have the planetary on it. This one does. In order to show you how to remove the planetary, I had to use this machine because I cannot get this planetary to go into place. This is actually not the original planetary for the silver machine over here. This is a replacement. So sometimes these planetaries here, they can just fracture, they can just break. It happens on occasion. And when that happened on this machine, it actually damaged this planetary shaft right here. And you can't just change this planetary shaft. This planetary shaft is part of the entire motor and transmission system. And so I'm going to have to swap the whole motor, transmission, and everything to replace this so that I can get that planetary to go up into place. But don't worry, if you miss the white machine that much, it is for sale on our website. It could be yours. In fact, we have a whole bunch of mixers available on our website. Now, these are all Proline 7-quart and professional 600s. We have a whole bunch of different colors, but we also have artisans and classics and all of those things as well. So check that out. Moving right along, so we need to remove this single screw back here. It's a Phillips head, and we need to remove this so that we can take off the beauty band. So once that screw is removed, this beauty band literally just kind of pulls out of place like so. We'll just set that off to the side.
All right, with that beauty band out of place, you can now see that there are screws revealed. So there's 2 here on this side, and then if you turn the machine over to the other side, there's 2 in the same spots on the other side as well. So let's go ahead and remove those.
You know, I used to have a teacher that used to tell me, if you keep screwing around, you're not going to go anywhere in life. Well, how do you like me now, Mrs. Davidson? How do you like me now?
So with that last screw out of place, this housing can now just pull away from the machine, and this is what we are left with. So these are actually fairly simple units. So, you know, down here we have the speed control board, right? Here's the lever for it over here. You know, that's how you switch the speeds. And then you have the motor and transmission here. So about from where my thumb is back to here, this is the whole motor unit. And then you have a transmission right here. And then up here you have the planetary gears. So let's get this taken apart. I'll show you what they look like. All right, to go any further here, we're gonna need what's called a T15. That's the size. It's a Torx bit. It looks like a little star-headed bit right here. That's what we need. Now, you don't have to do this portion when we're removing the complete motor, but there is a reason to do this. I'll explain later, but let's just go ahead and take this out. I'll show you what these 2 large planetary gears up here look like. Okay, with those screws out, we can go ahead and remove and take a look at that. Let's get a closer look. All right, so what we have here is, this is the planetary main gear down here, the center planetary gear. And this is considered the hub gear, right? So this is where you plug in your external attachments to run like your meat grinders and things like that. Now, as you can tell, these gears up here are very, very bulky, very sturdy. Very rarely are we ever seeing either of these gears go bad. Now, generally speaking, when gears do fail in this unit, it's in this sleeve right here. Now, I'll show you how to access that and how to take a look at those here in a second. Let's look at some of the other issues that require you to replace this motor. Now, first off is if this fan is broken, which this one is. Look how that just pulls off. It shouldn't come off that easy. Here's a better look at that fan. You can see when I put a little pressure on it, it is cracked right down the center there. Now, as is, this fan actually still works. The unit still works just fine. If this fan were to actually fracture completely and fall off, well, then it would stop functioning properly. And the next thing you want to look for is this magnet right here. So if this magnet breaks, so this is the hall sensor right here, and it reads that magnet as it spins, and that's what helps it set the speeds as the unit runs. If this were to break, generally what happens is, like I said, the machine will run. When you put it on speed 1, it'll turn all the way on to high, go crazy for a few seconds, and then power down. So if you're having that symptom, that's one thing to look for, but either way, it's going to result in replacing the entire unit. There are actually 2 ways to go about swapping this motor. There's a complete swap, or you can just swap the rear end. You know, we did inspect these gears up here. Everything up here was fine. So there's no reason why you cannot leave this entire front, you know, portion of the machine on and only replace the gears in the motor. But if you want to swap the whole thing, you can. Generally, what I like to do is just swap the motor and the gears, leave this on, and then you have a spare part for if these front ones ever break, then you can take this off and replace those with that spare part. Now I'm going to show you both of those methods on repairing this motor here, whether you leave the front and risk to replace this or replace the entire thing. Now normally there is a zip tie that runs right here that holds these wires in place. I've already removed that. You can just take a razor and just clip that, and it just allows this to have a little bit more mobility so that you can take the motor off. All right, let's proceed. So as you can see here, this motor is just kind of floating here in the rear. It's only held in place by 2 screws, one here and one right here. But before we remove those, like I said, you need to take off that zip tie, and then we have to remove a few clips. So we're going to remove this clip, and then we're going to remove this hall sensor right here. Let's show you how to do that. All right, let's start by removing this hall sensor right here. So as you can tell, there's a little tiny like tab right there. If you press down on that real firm and just kind of wiggle, this should pull up out of place like that. Now, if you're having trouble getting this hall sensor out by hand, you can't put enough pressure on it, what you can do, you can take a little flathead screwdriver and you can actually just put it in right there, and you can push on it and help you assist in pulling out that hall sensor. Next, we're going to have to remove this clip right here. So this is the clip, the power wires, the power from the cord runs into this board, and then it runs from the board to the clip and then into the machine. So these are the main power wires that run into the machine. Now, removing these clips can sometimes be a little bit of a pain. Now, as you can see right here, there's just a little tab that you can push down on, and then you should be able to separate these 2 units apart. So take a look here. Here's that tab that I'm talking about. Press down on that with your finger, and you should just be able to clip them apart. Again, if you're having issues getting that out, you can do the same thing with the flathead screwdriver, where you just put a little pressure on that tab with the screwdriver, and then it should allow you to pull it out nice and easy. So now that we have the hall sensor disconnected and the power clip disconnected, now we can actually remove this rear end. So there's just, like I said, 2 screws, and there's the T15 Torx bits. There's 1 screw here and 1 screw right here. Let's go ahead and remove those. Now what I like to do is I like to start by removing just one of these screws. So we'll go ahead and loosen this thing up here. Now they are pretty long. They pull out. This is what they look like. So they got a long shank right here, and then they have the threads that run up and secure the motor into place. Now we have to do something a little different when we move to this side. Let me show you. Now this screw is the only thing that's holding this entire motor and everything in place, and it's pretty heavy. So if we remove just this is going to fall down and hit this board. We don't want to damage our speed board. So what we need to do is we need to get a hand on our motor like so, and then we can go ahead and loosen this screw. And you can see, look, it's already starting to try and fall away. See how it starts to sag? We don't want it to fall off of there. So just make sure you get a nice firm grip on that, and we'll go ahead and remove this screw. Now, once both of those screws are removed, we can just kind of wiggle this out here. And what you'll see is just an entire motor unit here. So there's supposed to be a little gear that sits on this shaft right there. It's still in the machine. I'll show you here in just a second. There's also an O-ring right here. You see this O-ring that runs around the outside of this? Whenever you reinstall your motor, if you do it this route without changing, the whole front end, you'll want to make sure that that is sealed properly, because sometimes it can kind of fall out. You just want to make sure it's down in place. Now, if the gears are bad, when you open this thing up back here, you'll find any number of these gears can actually be failed. There's not like a particular one that fails. So here, right here is that little tiny gear here, right? This is the one, if I can get it. Come on, baby. This is the one that was on the motor, right? It's just a little tiny, what they call a sun gear. And as you can see, that's the one that just sits, like I said, right there on the motor, like so. Now we can go ahead and just remove this entire transmission portion out of the machine. There we go, just like that. It just pulls right out. Now, got to be a little careful because there are gears that sit in there. There's gears that sit on this side as well. So we'll show you all of this here. All right, so this is what we're looking at here. So this is that front housing there, right? So there's what I like to call the little trident here. There's 3 little prongs here, and then there's one in the middle. Now, there are actually 2 different sets of gears in here, and there are 3 of each one of these. Obviously, you can tell one is quite a bit thicker. That is the one that goes up front here. These just press onto those, what I like to, like I said, call the trident there, and they just sit in place just like that. And this is what we're left with here, right? We have this, what I call the sleeve, right? And then we have another little trident part that has a gear on that. So you see this little gear on the end right here? It actually mounts in between all of these gears right here in the center on that little peg. You just got to kind of work it into place. You got to get it to mesh up with the other gear teeth, and eventually it'll just slide right in, just like so. Then we have the sleeve here. Now we want to take note of this, right? You see, this has a little recess right here. If we look at both sides are recessed. This portion actually slides in to this housing here. So this faces the machine like so. And then you just want to line this up. You might have to wiggle it a little bit, like I said, to get the gears to start to line up. And once they line up, you just press that into place like that. And now we have these thinner gears, right? So remember, the thicker gears are already in there up front. Now the smaller, thinner gears go onto these little trident tabs right here. So basically we'll just line those up and set those into place like that. Now remember, there are 3 of these. Now it doesn't matter which orientation. They can go in like this or in like this. It's going to be the exact same. There's no proper orientation for those. We just slide those into place. And then lastly, we have the motor portion itself. Now, this does go on a certain way. Remember, there is this little gear up here. Remember to make sure that your O-ring is in place here. This orientation, this is how it needs to go right here. You want the power clip to be on the side of the power clip, and then you want the hall sensor port right here to be on the top side, like that. So we just line this up. You line these gears. You may have to wiggle it a little bit to get that to center into place. It's all about just getting those gears meshed up. And eventually it'll end up meshing when you wiggle it just a hair here. Also, if you prefer, what you can do is you can go ahead and just remove this gear by hand and then go ahead and put it in that way. Sometimes it's a little bit easier to get those gears lined up and meshed up. You don't have to fight the counterweight of that motor. There we go, just like that. And now the motor can then just slide into place. Now, one thing that we need to make sure up here is that this motor actually meshes up. You see this lip right here? This actually goes over that. You need to get everything nice and lined up and secured. You don't want to see any gaps in here. You want all of this, like I said, to be nice and aligned. And then you can just go ahead and put a screw in to secure it into place.
So the main reason we went through all of those internal gears and how to install those things is because this is how the motor comes right here. Let's take a better look. So as I stated previously, this motor comes as a complete unit. Now you can go ahead and leave the zip tie on here, but you're gonna have to do the whole process we just did, potentially, because these gears can kind of fall out. What you're gonna have to do when you get your new motor is actually just, remove the 2 screws that mount this back end into place, and then just pull it away from this front housing, and then you can just link it all up to your existing transmission housing here. All right, so I've gone ahead and remounted the old motor back to the unit because now we're going to remove this entire thing. For those of you that want to just replace the entire thing, or if you had an issue with the planetary like I have here, which is the reason why we have to switch this front part, we're going to do it all. So let's do that real quick. All right, so to remove this entire unit, the first thing we want to do is get a towel and set it down here on your base again. Reason being is that this what they call the internal ring gear right here, this whole thing is going to fall away as we start removing screws. So definitely want to have a towel down here. Now we want to start by removing 4 screws. Now if you can tell, see how this one is just flat against this transmission housing? This one has like another little raised lip. We want to remove the screws with the raised lip. So there's 1, 2, and then on the other side, there's 2 in the same spot, just, transposed here. So 1 here and 1 here. So we're gonna go ahead and remove those 4 screws. Again, that's gonna allow that to drop. So what we wanna do is as we get that last one starting to come out, we wanna make sure that we have a hand right here to catch that. All right, so let's get started removing those 4 screws. Remember, like I said, get the one with the little raised lip. So we're gonna start here. We're gonna get this one removed. Then we'll just keep moving on down the line. All right, so as I stated, we are on this last screw here. We want to get our hand down here because watch, as we go ahead and start to unscrew this, this is going to fall away like that. Now take a look at this external gear here. All you have to do to reinstall this is just line these tabs up here from the underside and then screw them back into place. Very, very simple. Now here's a quick look at all of those screws that we just removed. Now we're going to go ahead and remove the rest of these screws. These are all the same size screws. You'll notice when you pull these out, they're all going to be the same. So these can all go back in any orientation. Well, let's go ahead and remove the rest of these screws. Remember, we're going to have 4 more to do here. There's 1. Now, as we go to remove this last screw here, the weight of the motor is going to try and cause this thing to tilt back. Again, we just want to put a little pressure here with our hand to keep this thing from rocking back and hitting that board. And we'll just go ahead and remove this last screw here. Now, once that last screw is removed, this thing can now just pull up and away, just like that. And now we're ready to insert the new one and reinstall it all. Okay, so we have the new motor here. Now take a look. There's these little tabs. There's one here and one right here. We need to line those up with these holes right here to get those to sit into place. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. There we go. She's seated in place. Now we're going to go ahead and put a screw in right here to secure this down so we don't have to hold pressure on it anymore. Just like that. Now we can go about reinstalling the other screws so we can hit this one and then these 2 on the other side as well. Now we're ready to go ahead and install this external ring gear. Now a few things to take into account is that you see how this has a little raised edge? There's a little port on the underside right where these screw holes are on the underside that these mount up into. So it'll mount up in there. This is the orientation you want it in. So you see these little cutouts right here. You want those running into the machine, like straight into the machine. If you put it in this way, it won't line up properly. So we want it like this. We're gonna go ahead and just slide this up into place now. And you'll just wanna kind of rotate it slowly till you feel it mesh up. Now pay attention to your screw holes there. When you feel that mesh up, you'll see how the threads will actually just align right with those holes. And now we're ready to put a few more screws in there. Now we can just go ahead and reinstall the rest of these screws into place. Finishing up this last screw here, and now the motor is completely mounted into place. We have a brand new motor on the machine, but we're not done yet. Now we need to go ahead and mount our electrical clips here. So very easy, these just slide right into place. You get it aligned, push it into place, it's secured. And then lastly for the hall sensor here. So remember this little tab here, it needs to face you, right? This way. And we'll go ahead and just line it up with its little hole that it goes into.
Now this hall sensor doesn't have a whole bunch of extra slack in it, so it can be kind of a pain to get it where it needs to go, but eventually you will get it lined up, get it dropped down, and then it just clicks into place. Did you hear that? It's now secured into spot.
Now, before we go any further, I always like to make sure that it runs. So go ahead, plug your machine in, because you don't want to put the whole thing together, find out that something's wrong, and have to take it all apart again. So let's test it now. So let's go ahead, take a little listen here. It's live! Oh, it's purring like a kitten. Listen to how nice and quiet that is.
Okay, so make sure that your machine is unplugged. Now that we know that it's running, it's just a matter of dropping this housing into place. So we're just gonna line that up and just place her on down here and just give her a little wiggle. It'll line up perfectly. And now we just gotta put these screws back in. So if all has gone well at this point, all we're gonna have left is a planetary, the 4 body screws that go around here, and then there's also 1 little screw here for the beauty band, and then your pin for the planetary. All right, we're getting our last body screw in here, so we're gonna go ahead and secure that down, and then we'll turn this our way like this, and then you need to locate your beauty band, which I have laying over here. Make sure that it's going on the right way, right? You want your letters to be on right. You can put it on upside down. We don't want to do that. So let's go ahead, get that into place. That just sits in this little channel right here. So we'll just go ahead, get that down into place, and then we'll find our little tiny screw like this, and we'll go ahead and tighten that down. Now with this beauty band screw here, do not use power tools and do not get it too tight, because you can actually strip out this housing here, and then this will no longer tighten. It won't secure, right? So we don't want to strip those threads. Just get it nice and hand tight, just like that. And she's looking good. And the very last step here is just getting our planetary lined up here. So you see the hole, you got the pin, there's a hole here. We just want to match that up on that planetary shaft. You might have to wiggle it up into place a little bit to get it to go properly. There we go. We are now in place. Now just align your pinholes. You can see some light through there. We're nice and aligned. And just push this into place by hand to get it started. So I've got it started there. You might even feel or hear a little click. And now we're gonna have to take a hammer and a punch and just tap this thing back into place. Like I said, it doesn't take too much force here. All right, there we go, just like that. That actually completes the motor swap on the professional 7-quart, or Proline 7-quart, and the commercial 8-quart machines. Let's go ahead and turn it on one more time just to make sure that that planetary is nice and lined up here. There we go. Take a listen to that. These things are amazing. That concludes the motor swap. Now we have a perfectly well-running machine. Now, like I said, there are a few other issues with these machines. We will address those in other videos. We got the speed control board, changing out the planetary, just some minor issues that these things run into over time. Now, if you need any parts, tools, grease, anything to do this job, make sure to check out our website, mrmixer.store. If this is something that you don't think you want to do, you can always send it in to us. We do accept shipments. We do repairs. And also, if you're in the market for a mixer, we have those as well. And we have tons of just really cool upgrades and things like that that could really help improve your baking experience. So make sure to check out our website, mrmixer.store. As always, I appreciate you so much for watching this video. Make sure to give it a like and a follow, and we'll see you next time.